world of handmade business can be tough when trying to monetize what you love. We've got truth bombs and motivation to help you find your way through. Passion to profit, let's start today, 'cause the world needs what you create. Tune in right now, it's your shot to learn how to be a handmade boss.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the How to Be a Handmade Boss podcast. So one thing I am really rubbish at is promoting the book, which obviously is kind of what this podcast is named after. And it's literally called the same thing as a podcast, How to Be a Handmade Boss. And that is available on Amazon. And it's really perfect for those who are looking to restart an Etsy shop, do a bit of a pivot, maybe had an Etsy shop a year or so ago and has done nothing with it and is ready to kind of really make it rock and roll, or even complete beginners that have no idea where to even start. It's got lots of really cool things in there, like telling you how to choose your business name, how to make it legal, SEO, target market branding, all of the need to knows before you start. So I just thought I would come in here and just kind of say that initially, just because I'm so bad, and the team were kind of like, are you gonna like promote the book? That's the whole reason this podcast was kind of named after. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure. So done that is a big tick. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more on why business can feel really hard. And this is really like a follow-on episode from the one where I talked about business lessons and the hard ones that I had to learn. And these lessons are more kind of recent. So in that previous episode, I talked more about, 2022 and previous, whereas now I'm talking more about 2023 and kind of up until this point. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So the first one is, don't be afraid to speak out on things that might potentially upset people in your industry, in your audience, or some people, and things that maybe you feel strongly about speaking out against, and things that you think have to be said, okay? And for me, being visible sometimes means being visible to the wrong people. And I think just really understanding that in order for you to show up more online, to have more eyeballs potentially to your business, to really kind of scale and grow, you are naturally going to have to be more visible. And what does that mean? Well, sometimes you're going to be visible to people who don't like you, who might even hate you, in fact, and who don't like what you say. They don't like how you say it. They don't like how you look. And honestly, I did talk about this a lot in the episode where I talk about hard business lessons, of course, as you guys know. But really, there's nothing anyone, you, me, anyone can do about that. Like, if people don't like you, they will find any reason to not like you. It can be your hair color. It can be the shape of your nose. It can be how you do your makeup. It can be what you wear. It can be the earrings that you have on. It can be your accent. It can be your teeth. It can literally be anything. And I think that is one part of it. But also another part of it is, don't try and stay within the lines because you think that's going to make more people like you. And this is something that I really learned the minute I started to kind of like change up how I market handmade bosses. Because before kind of 2023, the beginning of, I was very much like, oh, I'm going to keep it to all very nicey things and talk about SEO and talk about branding, but only to make sure that it doesn't step on anyone else's toes. And I guess I was just trying to be nice, like Mr. Nice Guy. And I think what comes along with this is, obviously you don't want to upset people. You know, you don't want to just like say mean things just to get, comments and visibility, because that's obviously what a lot of people do at times. And it's just not great, is it? Like, a lot of people don't like you because naturally you are a little bit of a douchebag. But really talking about things that a lot of people are too scared to talk on. Like for me, I was really kind of scared of talking about, calling out other particular coaches, talking about the fact that a lot of people will gaslight you and scaremonger you into buying their courses or, listening to them or anything like that. And talking more about, like the mindset stuff. Not about the sexy, here's how you can make 100 grand in 7 days, all that kind of stuff. And I started to talk about the unsexy truths of running a handmade business, of having a business in general. And I did get the virtual stink eye from a lot of people. And I actually started to get called out on like certain people's YouTube channels and stuff. And it was kind of like, you know what? If you don't agree, then move on with your day, like whatever. It wasn't like I was saying anything that was incorrect or wrong, but people didn't like the fact that I was basically being like, hey, this is not right. This is not what you should be doing. An example of it is when I put some posts up about terms that you shouldn't use, like IP infringement, all that kind of thing. Someone directly on YouTube was like, oh, this is just wrong. And it's like, I'm like, no, you should be aware of these, but also get legal advice. And they were like, oh, no, you don't need to. And it was like, okay, sure. I mean, if you're literally advising people to trust your legal advice over an actual legal professional, then that raises some questions, So I think really just looking at what are some things that you want to say that perhaps you won't hurt anybody, but that you're scared to offend people maybe. And that could be something like, let's say you make candles, and you are so sick and tired of people using non-soy wax that maybe you put a post up saying, you know what, like non-soy wax or paraffin wax is so bad for you. Here is the reasons why. I really wish that the industry would stop using it. That might offend some people, perhaps. And this is just an example, of course, that might still use paraffin wax or something along those lines. Obviously, I don't know anything about waxes, so don't come at me and say, Steph, you're wrong. This is literally just an example. But let's say that's how you feel. Yes, you're going to offend some people who still use it, and you might, to be frank, piss off some people who don't agree with you. But you are being authentic, you are being honest, you are standing with your 2 feet on the ground and saying, no, this is how I feel, I'm putting it out there. If anyone agrees with me, that's great. If you don't, then block me, unfollow me, move on with your day. So for me, I was really kind of afraid of this whole cancel culture and being afraid of offending people. And for the longest time, that kept me very, I don't know what the word is, but very fluffy. Very like, oh yeah, well that's Steph, but she doesn't really stand for anything, and she just kind of goes about her day and until I was like, no, you know what, I don't want to dull my shine. I want to show up as me, okay? And sometimes I swear, sometimes I get things wrong, sometimes I trip over my words, sometimes I'm trying to explain something that's making sense in my head but it's not really coming across. Sometimes people will say, well, Steph, your advice doesn't work. And I'll say, okay, so how long have you been doing it for? Oh, like a week. And I'd be like, well, I'm calling you out. Literally, sometimes I'm too transparent. Sometimes I'm too brash and too blunt. Sometimes I say it how it is, and that can sometimes upset people. But at the end of the day, that's who I am. And that's a coaching style that I have. And it's a bit like a target market for a product, like what you guys have, is that if you're trying to attract everybody, you're not going to attract anybody. And for the longest time, that's what I was like. People will call you fake. People will want to see you fall and fail. People will want to rip you apart with their words at times. I'm not saying that happens all the time. And please don't be afraid of posting things like that and talking about things like that for fear of someone coming at you in the comments, because it doesn't matter if you post it or if you don't. People are still going to come at you, right? But also, people will respect you and connect with you, vibe with your vibes, and genuinely trust you more, right? So like I said, as long as you aren't deliberately setting out to hurt anybody or name names or call people out, then speaking your truth and standing in your truth is so much more valuable than trying to be fluffy and above board and all that kind of thing. You'll famously kind of hear me say, I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about anything like that because I know nothing about it. So I don't really want to comment on it. And I'm not saying go that far and, start kind of, doing whatever politicians or I don't know what they do. But that I'm quite sort of blunt about not watching the news and kind of sticking away from that and being like, this is the reason why I do it and da-da-da-da. And so, sometimes even with that little tiny thing I say, people are like, oh, well, you should watch the news and da-da-da-da. And I'm left kind of feeling a bit like, well, you know what? The news isn't great for my mental health. And I choose not to partake in the scaremongering, in, a lot of the things. Yes, there are some positive things that happen in the news, but there are also a lot of negatives. Someone the other day was like, oh, well, you don't know what's kind of like going on in the world. And I'm like, great. That's how I like it. I like to keep my field of vision when I'm in the zone very, very small. As I say, put my blinders on. I think just standing in your truth, speaking about things, and start off small, start off speaking about things in your industry that you're not a fan of, talk about some trends that you've seen that maybe you don't like, talk about maybe colour of the year and how you don't agree, or trends and how you don't agree, talk about things that maybe are going on within kind of industry news perhaps and how you do or don't agree. Start off really, really small, but just start speaking your truth in one way, shape or form. Okay. So the second lesson is actually quite a funny thing. It kind of goes against something that I said in the previous lessons that I've learned episode. And it is be the dumbest person in the room. And the first time I said this to my other half, he thought I was doing some kind of like weird self-deprecating joke. And he was like, I'm not sure what to do with this one. And he followed up, love him to bits, by saying, no, but you are smart. Like, don't think you're dumb. And while I love him for being like, no, like wanting to lift me up, I said to him, no, I mean, I want to hire people who are smarter than me and better than me in a lot of ways with a lot of things. And what I've done over the past year really is look at what I'm good at, what is my zone, where do I, what fills up my cup the most, obviously, but also what am I really good at and what am I so capable of doing day in, day out? What kind of skills and niches do I have that will continue to grow the business? Okay. And I've obviously got my 3 things, which I talked about in the previous episode. But there's also a lot outside of those 3 things that I am not great at and I don't enjoy doing. And that really just depletes me and makes me feel drained. One of those things is like writing blog posts. Like I love talking. I love doing podcasts. I love doing video, lives, all that kind of thing. I hate typing. And I find it really hard when someone's like, oh, can you type out like a 500 word blog post? Someone recently asked me to create a blog post for an online publication, which I agreed to. And I was like so bored, like 20 minutes in, I was like ready to just give it up. So that being said, I don't necessarily want to learn how to write an effective blog post. I don't necessarily want to learn how to edit a really engaging video. I don't want to learn how to upload a podcast because I know all those things would bore me to tears and drain me. And therefore, the very next time I need to show up at full energy level, whether that's on a live, a challenge, whatever that is, I know that I won't be because I would have been drained and things go wrong with this type of stuff, especially with tech, and you're going to end up being annoyed at something at some point. So naturally you are going to be a bit like, ugh, and lethargic and not really feeling it. So I really wanted to basically outsource things in a way that would make them better than me just doing it. Right. So, I needed help, like the latter end of, the beginning of 2023, I needed help. The business was growing to a level where I couldn't sustain it with just me and a virtual assistant. There were some changes that kind of went off behind the scenes, like people leaving, people being hired, more people leaving. There was a lot of like changes, I think. I really think like the beginning of 23, it was 3 years after COVID. If people kind of had a initial business that they started during COVID, it might have run its course by then, or people perhaps were ready to like make the jump and leave their job and kind of go as a full-time freelancer or something along those lines. So like one of those things is, for me, I hired a kind of in and out OBM. So for me, one of those amazing things that I did that I do not regret in the slightest is I hired kind of like an in and out OBM, which is an online business manager. So for me, and what that means, it sounds very like intense and you're probably like, whoa, that is way above my head, but I promise you it's not. And basically every quarter we have a meeting. In fact, one of our meetings is tomorrow, actually, as of recording this. And every quarter we will get together to discuss what has gone on, what things still are left to kind of do, how I'm feeling, how the team feels, and like looking ahead as to, okay, what is going to grow the business? Like from here forward, what is going to do that? Because I am so bad at being able to, in my own business, being able to lean out and lean back and kind of assess things. I'm really good at being a visionary and having all of these ideas and all these really cool things that I want to do, but I'm not so good at looking at how does it all connect the dots together. And that is where Emily comes in, who is my OBM. Love her a bit. She's awesome. And if you're in your business every waking moment, you're going to miss things. You're going to miss opportunities. You're going to miss weaknesses. You're going to drop the ball. Like there are going to be things that you screw up. And that was me. Like I was so exhausted. I was burning out to the point where I was like, if I carry on down this road, handmade bosses will no longer be a thing, because I will burn it to the ground, because I know what I'm like and my brain tries to keep me safe. It throws its toys out the pram. And inevitably, at some point, it will all go a bit wrong. So the value that she gives me is immense. And although I don't work side by side with her every single week, even just having someone to check in with once a quarter is just invaluable. And honestly, it is lovely to just have someone that has your back. I am a coach at the end of the day. A lot of people lean on me, which I love. That's literally what fills me up. But sometimes the person that people lean on needs someone to lean on. And Emily is that for me. And it's just one example of one hire that I've made. There's lots of others and changes that I've made and all that kind of stuff. But really, I think the lesson here is to be able to have people around you that are better at the things that you are okay at or not very good at. Okay, so where in your business, it doesn't have to be outsourcing either. It can be automating it. It can be eliminating it, like looking at various aspects within your business. Where are you overcomplicating it? And that was the key question for me, is where am I making things more complicated than they actually have to be? Because at the end of the day, we are all very good at being busy. And like I said before, we wear busy like a badge of freaking honor. And unfortunately, that means that in order for us sometimes to feel accomplished, we put a lot on our plate. And we pile more on, we have more projects, more social media posts, more listings, more. And this is where this whole thing that I talk about a lot of more comes into play. Because I think a lot of people are like, right, if I am making X amount, doing X amount of things, or rather X amount of things for Y amount of time, then in order to make double that, I have to double the time, I have to double the amount of things I do. And honestly, in my experience, that never ever works. You actually don't have to do double. You merely have to double down on the things that are working. It's not about doing double the amount of things. It's not about going wide with it all. It's about going deep. And that for me sometimes is really tricky, especially if you're in your business all the time. And this is where like the HBSA really comes into its own, I think, is because you do have the community around you. You are able to be like, let's post in the group. Guys, am I overthinking this too much? Like, where can I simplify things? And then people can come in and say, oh, okay, I've spotted this, this, and this. And it's so amazing when you have a simpler business that is making more money and you have more freedom. Because I really do strongly think that a lot of you listening, watching, whatever, are doing your business because you want that financial freedom and you want that time freedom as well. And you also want some spaciousness within your day, not to be constantly worrying about, right, my competitor's doing this, I should be doing this, I could be doing this, I could be doing that. And also as well, just a little side note here, don't try to fill every hour of your time with something useful, because that also burns you out as well. Don't be afraid to just spend time doing nothing. And yeah, just remember why you started your business in the first place. Okay, so lesson number 3 is ride the wave and acknowledge your body patterns. It sounds a bit like some kind of surfing thing, right? But I think this all starts from when we're very, very young. Because when we're like, 4, 5, maybe even younger, we start going to like preschool or play school, depending on where you are in the world. And it's like, okay, I don't know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or something like that. From this to this, you're going to play school. And it starts us off in this like weird, rigid kind of way we set up our week. And we're looking at time as this is a day, this is a week, this is a month, and this is what we're doing. But we forget sometimes that our body doesn't understand time, does it? It's not as if you've got some like internal clock that's like, oh, that's an hour just gone, or, that's next week coming around. Like if we didn't have clocks or time or anything like that, we wouldn't know. We'd know by the sun. We'd know maybe by like the stars if you're like that clever. I'm not, so I wouldn't have a clue. I mean, the sun I would, because obviously, daytime, nighttime. But after 45 of those, you'd probably lose count. You wouldn't know if it's July, June, September, whatever, right? So really looking at how our body is responding to things is really a key thing here. And you have to think about it, even when we go into like primary school, secondary school, high school, junior school, whatever, it's like Monday to Friday, unless you're sick, unless you absolutely cannot make it into school. Other than that, you're going. And it doesn't matter whether you kick or scream. It doesn't matter if you're feeling a little bit nervous. It doesn't matter if your energy's low. It doesn't matter. You're going. And we just have this very linear view of time and how our energy has to match it. And, for me when I was about 13, 14, for 2 years, I was so incredibly tired. By 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I just could not concentrate. And I was constantly being bashed by my teachers, by my peers. Steph, you must pay attention. You must, stay awake. You must. And for the longest time, I was like, oh, it's something wrong with me. Like, I'm not fitting in with time and I'm not fitting in with what everyone else is doing. And it wasn't until I realized that I was a morning person and my energy has always and probably will always dip mid-afternoon onwards. 6 a.m. I'm like, I was bright as a button, la 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 la, like loving life. And I quite often will like get up at 5:30, 6 and start work at ridiculously early o'clock because I know that my energy's high, and I'm loving life. By the time it gets like 2, 3 o'clock, I'm done. I'm tired. I just want to veg on the couch with Galaxy Ripple, which is my favorite chocolate bar right now, by the way, and just do nothing. And sometimes when we start our handmade business, we follow along in that linear path, because we might have gone from a 9 to 5 to our job. We might have had a child with our job. And I think, to be honest, a lot of people who have kids or look after kids know that like time just goes out the window, because when the kid's up, you're up. when the kid wants feeding, you're going to feed him. So I think that, you know, mums and people who look after children or have a lot of involvement with kids, they do understand this. But for me, obviously, I don't have kids. So for me, it was like, wow, okay. And I think the first throwing into this was when Phoebe was a wee puppy, and she was like 10 weeks old, and it was like, oh, okay, like this doggo is getting up at 3 a.m. wanting a wee, wanting a poo, and wanting to play. And obviously we were like, no. Go back to bed. And that was the same for about six weeks. And honestly, respect to new parents, because I was done in by the end of it. But I digress. So a really good book. And if you get a menstrual cycle, I would recommend reading this book. And it's called In the Flow by Elisa Vitti. So Elisa is Alissa. VT is Vitti. I'll put it in the show notes. Because reading this made me realize that if you get a period, you have your own 28-day cycle that does not work well with the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 that our society has come to like normalize. And I started off like that as well. When I first started my business, my working hours were like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And like I said, by like 2-3 o'clock, I was battling. I was fighting for my life, trying to stay awake, and I would make mistakes. And the funny thing is that quite often I would fulfill my orders at night, not for any reason. I think just because I wanted to get all of the like PC work and like marketing and like business growth stuff at the beginning of the day. And then I would do my orders like kind of evening time, but I would make mistakes. My eyes would start to blur. Like literally, I just was not my best self. And then it just started to feel weird. And I can't really describe it, but it started to make me feel like a bit empty, and I need something else to happen in my life kind of way, and feel like I lost that inner sparkle, that inner spark, that enjoyment, that fire that made me love my business. And really, to be honest with you, it just made it all feel not worth it. Because I was battling, and every day was a constant, you need to, you ought to, you must. And it was not fun anymore. And I think probably if you relate to this, I would start to look at how you run your days, look at that as a separate thing to how your body is with your energy. Now that could be, you could be a night owl. Like my other half, he is a night owl. He does not do mornings, which is really funny. Because as soon as I wake up, I spring out of bed. I don't lie in bed on my phone. Like I hate lying in bed doing nothing. It drives me insane. I'm not the kind of person that could ever do breakfast in bed. It would not suit me at all. And also, ew, crumbs. It's such a moniker. And it really annoys him because I'm like, good morning. And he's like, go away. But when it comes to like evening time, we are the opposite. He's like, hello, like da-da-da, and I'm just like, be quiet, let's have some candles, let's lower the lights, because I'm literally halfway to bed right now. So going back to when I first started my jewelry business, I sort of by 2017, 2018, it did take me a couple of years to learn this lesson, because obviously 2015, 2016, it was very like hustle. Entrepreneurship online was still very, very new. And it was all like, yes, we got to hustle from dawn till dusk. Nowadays, it's not really like that. I think people appreciate that entrepreneurs, they need a life too. So I started working with a free working timetable, which meant that when I felt inspired, I roll with it. And when I don't, I take a step back. Now, that worked. And I loosely follow this today. I do have some kind of structure, obviously like one-to-one calls and lives and all that kind of stuff. Like I do try and follow it a little bit, but it's an in-between with me. Like for example, if I woke up on a Monday 3 or 4 hours before a live and I just did not feel like doing it, I would give myself permission to cancel it and say to you guys, you know what? I'm not really feeling my best self. I'm sure you'll understand. And I've never actually done that. I've done it when I've been really poorly and like physically not able to do a live, but I've wanted to. But I've not ever had to do that because, you know, Monday mornings lives for me are what fill up my cup. So really experiment with a free working timetable, which is very much like when you feel inspired, when you want to work, then work. When you don't, then don't. And it might be that actually for the next week, you might feel really like in it or really not. And I would just say to you, experiment with honoring that. And if you don't feel like doing it, then don't. Or if you feel like you want to work, but you don't want to do like something high energy, then rest, reflect, do some behind the scenes quiet work. And then when you're ready to do something more front facing, more like, you know, buzzing, then do. Okay. So like for me, when I am on, so to speak, right? I'm so like British. I always say on, and people sometimes are a bit like, on what? A bicycle? I'm like, no. But when I'm on, my energy is quite low. And the week before as well, my energy is low. You know, I don't get very like antsy and a bit, you know, annoyed. Like I don't really ever get that, which is, I guess I'm like lucky for, really. But I can get upset quite easily in terms of, you know, if I have like a bad day where it's like one thing after another, ordinarily I'm able to kind of like brush it off. Whereas the week before I'm on, specifically like, I guess 4 to 5 days before, I'm like, I can't take it anymore. And I'm just like, I'm really aware that, okay, like let's not make decisions in that week because they're likely to come from a place of emotion rather than facts. So I kind of decide not to make decisions the week before I'm due on. When I'm actually on, I am much more level-headed, but my energy is low. I'm tired. I don't want to exercise. All I want to do is stay in my Udi and watch reruns of Friends and order Domino's for lunch. Like that is pretty much what I want to do. So again, I honor that. If I want to work, I will. If I get a pang of inspo, sometimes I don't even like follow through with it. I just make notes until I'm ready to. Then the week after, like my energy does a 360 and I am back on top of the world. I'm like, woohoo! Which is basically when I'm doing these podcasts. So I have high energy this week. I am bulk filming something like, 16 podcasts. And I'm just like, yes, this is great. But ask me in 2 weeks' time, and I'd be like, I'm not doing a podcast, even if you force me to. So again, like this is where honoring things and batching and really working and being reactive to your own body patterns. Now, even if you don't have a menstrual cycle, if you don't have a period, still research and take note of your own body patterns. So like my other half, he has like a 24-hour cycle, whereas me, it's like a 28-day. So like he will be really low energy first thing in the morning. He'll be really slow to get going. By kind of 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, he's at his peak. He's like, yes, amazing. Then it starts to slow down just a little bit by sort of 4, 5 o'clock. And then he does have this very like quiet working reflective state between like 7 and 8. So it could be that maybe you can observe that in yourself and maybe you don't get the 28-day thing, but instead yours is like a 24-hour thing. But just be aware of it. So lesson number 4 is learning to live alongside the chaos. And I have health anxiety. So if you didn't know, I don't consider it saying I have it because I guess I'm in recovery for it now. It took a long time. It's taken 4 or 5 years for me to even get to this point. So if you are in, like a very kind of low place in terms of like anxiety, mental health, it does get better, but it will take time. Like keep going, because every little tiny thing that you do, whether it's doing deep breathing for 2 minutes a day, whether it's cutting out sugar for a week, like all of these things compound on top of one another and you will eventually get there. So I actually did this whole, it's called the Big Maker Mindset Masterclass, or the Big Maker Mindset Workshop. I can't remember what I actually called it. And I will link the recording to it below in the show notes. And it's basically like a big masterclass that I wanted to do. I did it on the 8th of January, and I wanted to come back to 2024 with a massive bang and talk about mental health, talk about imposter syndrome, talk about maker mindset, and talk about all these things that like hold us back, right? And what I found with that is that a lot of people are waiting for something, waiting for the anxiety to subside so that they can do something within their business. They are waiting for things to settle down before even starting a business. They are waiting. And I used to be like this right up until I'd say the middle of 2023. I was like, yes, this is what it's like. You know, you have to work, and then pause when things get hard, and work, and then pause. But instead, I have found that living and working alongside the chaos has actually been, weirdly, a really freeing thing. And it's actually made my anxiety a lot better. And I can't really describe why, which is probably not very helpful for you guys. I appreciate that. But mental health is not a one and done thing. It's something that will flare up every so often. There might be a reason, there might not be, and derail our stride or our journey. And like, learning to live alongside the chaos means you don't stop living your life. You carry on living whilst holding your anxiety's hand. And it means being undeterred when things start to feel bad. So it's really like something that, and by the way, I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not trained in any way. This is just things that I've experienced myself that has helped me. But for me, allowing the feelings to be held very lightly. If I'm feeling nervous about doing something, I don't know what that something is, but it's just like, you know what, I'm just going to hold this a little bit lighter. I'm not going to put a lot of meaning into it. It's there. It feels bad. It's not great, but I'm just going to hold it there. And I'm going to kind of keep it spinning on one finger. And it might go away. It might not, but it's there. I'm going to gradually push it to one side, just a little tiny bit, so that I can carry on with my day. I'm not going to cancel plans. I'm not going to stop living my life. I'm going to carry on doing these things in spite of. And the first month of doing this was really hard because I was like, oh God, this feels so difficult. But after a while, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I can actually just carry on, and I don't actually have to worry about putting things on hold and cancelling plans with friends because I don't feel very good and all that kind of stuff. So just learning to live alongside the chaos. And it's not just mental health either. It's if your kid's sick that week, or if your dog needs to go to the vets, or if your dentist appointment is due and you've got so many things trying to juggle, is just holding that stress a little bit lighter. Don't put so much meaning and don't lean on it so much. Is it a busy week? Sure. Will things get back to normal at some point? Yes, they will. Will you do all these things on your to-do list at some point? Maybe. Or you might not. You might decide they're not important. But just kind of not sweating the small stuff and holding it all just a little bit lighter. And even just saying that, I think it just relaxes me because I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't have to worry. If I'm doing a live and I'm feeling anxious, if I have a panic attack on a live, I can literally just say, you know what, guys? Halfway through, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling great. I'm feeling very, very anxious. I've never done this, by the way, but this is in my head. One of my big fears is that on a live or halfway during a challenge or something like that, I'm going to be like, oh, I can't do it anymore. It's never happened. I've never even felt close to it. But you know what our brains are like. The threat is still there. I could quite easily turn around to all of you and say, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to stop there. I'll finish this off next week. I'm just going to go and chill out. And I'm sure you guys would not care. I'm sure you'd be like, yeah, you know what? That's fine. You go and look after you. Just holding things a little bit lighter and not letting it derail your journey is really something that was so simple, and something that when I first heard it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is just something else that people say, oh, don't worry or don't stress or calm down. But actually, it's been really good to just be like, life's going to get hard at times. And it's going to feel really tricky. But just learning to be like, it's not going to matter in a month's time or 6 months' time or a year's time. It's all going to be fine. And you are going to look back and be like, that was just a small blip, but it led me to where I am now, you know? So I'm really glad that you guys tuned into this one. I know it's a little bit longer, not too long, but a little bit longer than what we normally would go for. I hope that you've got some ahas. One thing that I will ask, if you wouldn't mind, is if you could leave me a wee review on Apple Podcasts. That would be amazing. Apple Podcasts basically likes reviews. If it doesn't get them, this podcast will forever be buried. And eventually we'll have to be like, right, it's not working. We're going to have to stop it. So if you could leave a review for me, that would be so amazing. And also my home hub is Instagram. So if you want to hit me up on DMs, tell me your aha moments. I would love to hear them. But for now, guys, I will catch you in the next one. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Be a Handmade Boss. And if you're eager to boost your Etsy sales within just 7 days, then be sure to join my most popular free training at handmadebosses.com/conversion. You can also find the link in the show notes as well. Keep an eye out for our next episode where we'll be continuing our journey towards handmade business success together. And until then, keep crafting and stay inspired because the world really does need those special creations that only you can make.